React Native developers, in this lesson, we're going to build the drag to sort user interaction. So here we can move a card around to change its order. And when I press on the card, the scale increases. And so it means that it's active. And then we can move the card around. So how are we going to do this? Well, here, all the cards are absolutely positioned. So we calculate depending on so we know the size of the container of the card. And we know the order of the card so that we know on the y-axis how to position the card. And then when we drag the card around, we look if we calculate its position based on this y position when it's active, we calculate its offset. Is it offset 0 first? Offset 1, second, offset 3. And if the offset has changed, we swipe its current offset. So its current offset is when we start the gesture. So here would be 2, right? 0, 1, 2. And here we calculate its offset, and its offset here becomes 1. So we swap the offset of the card, which was at offset 1, with this one. And when the offset change, we spring from one position to the other. So if the offset has changed, we spring the position to the new position. And here, when we release the gesture, we simply spring to also its current offset. And so we need to detect if the gesture is active. Also to know if we transition, if the gesture is active, the value here of the card is whatever is the translation from the gesture handler. If not, we need to always transition. It means it's one of the cards from below. We always need to transition to the offset value. And we also need to detect if the gesture is active. So you see here the Z index of the card is always higher than the two cards below, until also the spring finishes. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Let's jump into the code. All right, so here we have a scroll view with the cards. And so I think here we need to do a couple of things. First, we need to position the items in an absolute manner. So what I'm going to do is since we're going to use absolute positioning for the children, we need to set the size of the content of the scroll view, because the scroll view won't know how big the size of the container must be, since everything is absolutely positioned. So I'm going to do content container style, and we're going to do height is, so the height of one item. So here we have item with height times the number of items. So children count. Oh yeah, actually it's an array. So I think I can do directly children.length, because it's typed as array of React element. And we're going to need to do an absolute positioning on the children, and we're going to need to wrap the children into a, let's call it, sortable item component. Here it's empty, but this is where we're going to wrap the children with the pan gesture handler and all the logic to do the swapping of offsets. And we need to create the offsets. So here there's a typo. I mean, we don't seem to use it yet. So we're going to map on the children, and we are going to wrap the children into a sortable item. And we're going to need to create an offset for each child. So we're going to do offsets map. And here we would have a child index. And so the offset is, so it's an offset on the y axis. It's going to be height times I. So it's going to be 0. I times height is going to be 0 times height, 0. Height times 1, height, and height times 2. So we have our offsets. Here I can put a key on the index. And okay. We can pass the offset. Oh, actually, we need all the offsets. So offsets equals offsets. And then we can also pass the index as a property. That looks good. So now let's create this component. So let's do the props for it. So we have the index. We have the offsets. So it's a y. And no, actually it needs to be, this needs to be an animation value, right? Because we're gonna animate the position of the cards. Okay. So this one is gonna be animated dot shared value of number. And a child. So children, just React element. Okay. So index offsets children. Oops. So now here we need a pan gesture handler. And okay. First and single child of the pan gesture handler is an animated dot view. And we know that, so I think it's going to be an animated style. We use animated style here on the offset. So let me create a style, and we're going to put the child as children as children. So let's create first the style. So style is use animated style. And so I'm thinking it's a so absolute position fill. No. I mean, yes, but let me do position absolute. Top 0, left 0, and we can pass with height, which we can get as properties. So let me pass it here. So we have height with. Sortable item we need to import. Okay. And we can create the onGesture event. Use animated gesture handler. something like this. Pan gesture handler we import from React Native reanimated. Let's have a look. So we need now to translate with the offset. So transform, translate y equals current offset. So we can create here. These offsets at index. So it will be current offset dot y dot value. Okay, perfect. So now we need to drag the card around. So the first thing we're going to do here is actually now to have a x and y value to update. So I'm going to create x, use shared value, and y, use shared value. And here default value is not 0, but is current offset dot y. Dot y dot value. And here, when we start on start, we can store an offset in the context. So here we would have event, context, and we can do context dot offset y equals y dot value. And then on active, so event context, so x dot value is event dot translation x, and y dot value is event dot translation y plus offset y. And here, so I guess it's not a callback. We can write this directly. And here I need to type offset y as number. Okay. And now we also need to apply. So here would be y dot value, and same for translate x dot value. So the cards are not moving. So here the cards are moving. And so here when we need to do a couple of things now. When we release the gesture, we can snap back to the offset. So on end, so x dot value is with spring to 0. And so let me do that. And y dot value is with spring to current offset dot y dot value. So let's try. Perfect. And also now we can update the Z index so that when the card is active, it's always on top. So we can do is gesture active, default is false. And here we say is gesture active dot value equals true. And when we finish the spring, so I think the second parameter here is the config, and then we have a callback when the animation is over, where I can apply is gesture active false. And now we can use it for the Z index. So Z index, is gesture active dot value true. So we would have 100 or 1. Let's try. So that looks good. The active gesture is always on top. Or is it? No. I see, because this one is still springing. Wait. So here, spring. So it's so so it's almost actually here. It's almost as if we can only have one active card at the same time. So what we would need to do. So I think here is complaining because we use, but here we have a stable number of children. So I should do something like active card and use shared value. And there would be the index. So default would be -1, but there would be the index of the active card that we would update. So we would have active card. Because here, because of the spring, we can really have 2 active cards at the same time. So let me do active card. And so here we would do active card is index. And up. So we can only have one at the same time. I can remove this one here. Let's have a look. No. So if active card dot value equals index, we increase the Z index. Okay. And now let's try this one. It springs, but always perfect. So now we can do the swipe of the offset. And here we can use gesture active to do the scale when we select. So here we would do is gesture active value equals true. And here on end, immediately before we spring equals false. And we can use it to do a scale transform here. Scale is so is gesture active dot value is true. We go to 1.1. If not, we scale at 1, and we can use a spring transition with spring. So here it's big, but and then transition back to 1 nicely. It's a really big. I should make it smaller, but I like how the Z index is always correct now. And we know which card is active. So let me do 0.5 here. So 5%. And now let's do the meat of the lesson, which is to actually swipe these offsets. And here we need to calculate our current offset. So offset y equals, so we're going to do y dot value divided by height times height. And we need to round the division. So that's how we calculate of the cards we're active, we're moving around, what is current offset. So just based on its position. And now we need to check if its offset has changed. So we map so offsets for each offset. If offset dot y dot value equals current offset y, and it's a different offset, so and the index of the offset is different from index. So and right, if not, it means nothing has changed. So index is different from I. We need to swap. So it means that this offset, which is the card that is not moving, becomes current offset. So current offset dot y dot value. So we swipe the cards, and the current offset dot y becomes offset y. So y dot value. And we are probably going to need to, let me try if this works already. So actually, no. Yeah, here nothing is going to change because we need, if the values get updated below, so you see here the offset has changed, but the cards below, because they are not active, don't move because we didn't update X and Y, especially Y actually, we didn't update Y. So what we're going to do is to translate Y. So translate Y, we're going to use derived value. And if, so this is where gesture active is useful. And if the gesture is active, so value.true, then it's easy. It's what we had, right? So it would be, we return y.value. If not, we return the offset. So if the offset gets updated, translate y will get updated. So we return current offset.y.value. And now we're probably going to need to add, so this I think should work. And then we probably need to add some transitions to have nice springs from positions. Y.value, I think should be good. So you see, now it moves nicely. We just need to transition. So I would do with a spring. Oh, yes. I was thinking of putting it here, but no, wouldn't work. Because when we would drag the card, we don't want to add this extra effect of inertia. And so now it moves nicely. So here I probably need to reload. So here I can swipe nicely. No, doesn't work. And I think, so here now that we swap the offset, actually y is not correct. It's current offset.y.value. And I am wondering, actually here we should be able to set this one back to 0. Let's have a look. Much cleaner this way, I think. up, so I can drag the card around. It works nicely. Isn't that a cool user interaction? So here, really a fun user interaction that can fairly easily be implemented in Reanimated 2. And we'll probably, in the future, build even more complex variation of this problem. Everything we do on the y-axis here, we can do it on the x-axis. So if you have different columns. And yeah, there are some also sophistications we can add to this example, but this is the base recipe. Here, we make some assumptions about the children being stables, but we can potentially also have an offset array which is stables and listen to change in the children to update the offsets accordingly. If you remove one card, add some new cards, and so on. So this is just the base recipe. Potentially, we can make it way more sophisticated. Also, we could, when moving the cards, scroll down, implement all sorts of fun interactions.